Right. The new encounters would be like showing up to your project and it's now a crime scene. Or, watching neighbors down the street, get in a physical fight. Like those are the new experiences.
And like the occasional like raccoon or bat or that stuff. I don't think it matters how many houses you go into. Like you get trapped in a bathroom with a squirrel. Like you can't prepare yourself for that. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Hustle on Purpose podcast. Today we have with us Josh Couch. Josh, how's it going?
It's going good.
Good, man. I'm excited you came in today. So I know you well, but everyone else doesn't. So give us a little bit of a background on yourself and tell us a little bit about what it is you do and how you do it and all of that.
Sure. I have an electrical background. I went to school for construction management. My favorite part of construction management's estimating. I worked for a real estate investment company for about 4 years, and
that will remain nameless.
I've got a company called Arkansas Remodeling Consultants, and taken what I've learned from that real estate investment company and trying to help investors and wholesalers and homeowners.
Yeah. So I want to unpack that a little bit because there's a lot in there. So construction management background, but then you also have a thing for history.
Right. I have a degree in public history.
Okay.
I worked for UALR, which I think goes by UA Little Rock now. I worked for the Arkansas State Archives. So there was a period of a few years in there where I was out of the construction field, just exploring other hobbies. And
yeah,
I've been back in it for, I guess, 5 or 6 years now.
Well, it sounds like they wouldn't be connected, but I've had this thought before knowing about your background, but they are connected in the sense of like you're always learning and you're very detail oriented. So like I can totally see that fitting into like the state archives. What would you call it? Like their job role necessities. I could see you being like really good at that. I imagine the issue is you hit your ceiling rather quick. I don't know what the upward mobility looks like in that world. I would imagine it's higher in the construction, real estate, project management space.
Right. The archives, working in the archives is great because you're getting access to all these, books and newspapers and items that have some kind of historical value, and you have the time to jump down different rabbit holes and, do research on things that interest you. But you're in an office, all day, every day. And at the state archives, they're kind of, some of them are kind of back in dark caves and they don't see the light of day while they're in there working. Yeah. I loved it. I wish there was still a way that I could do it. But yeah, I prefer being out, at houses or even driving and just being out and about.
I imagine your old desk at the state archives being like where they send the guy in Office Space. Have you seen my stapler guy? Like just ends up in like a basement with no windows and just like blinking fluorescent lights.
So it was exactly that minus the lights. There was a giant scanner in there, and we had to have the maintenance guys from the state come in and put blackout curtains. So it was always dark. And
that makes sense. It also made me remember when we both worked at the institutional investment company, and it's making me remember two things. One was like one of the first times we ever rode around together, and I'm busy like doing my job and trying to like train you some. And we end up in this neighborhood where all the streets are named after Civil War
Right.
battles. And you just like lit up like a Christmas tree. And you were like, oh, that's like so-and-so street. I mean, I can't even remember them. You can probably remember all of them. And I'm just over there like, oh, like dude's apparently really big into history. Like, and then also it made me remember when we were in Memphis together for a training thing. And the owner of the company asked you like what you did before this, and you told him you were an archivist.
He asked me my job immediately before, going with that company.
Uh-huh.
So I'd already had a construction background, but
Right.
to answer his question, it was, I worked at an archives.
And what did he say?
Some other guy in the room was like, I think he said like papers and boxes or historical archives or.
Well, the owner of the
something.
company was like, what does that even mean? He was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think he thought you said like archaeologist. He's like, are you like digging up dinosaurs? You're like, no, I was in a basement scanning papers. But that was pretty funny. So all that construction management background, that degree, and then you worked, your favorite part was estimating. Did you ever do any estimating?
I had a
Professionally?
couple estimating jobs in the commercial field. One was for earthwork, dirt work. One was for underground utility pipes. I definitely prefer residential. I prefer looking at houses. I like to look at different job sites throughout the week, and there's some weeks that I might see 30 houses.
Right.
And in commercial, a lot of those guys, you're looking at, the framing of a building for 3 months at a time, or getting the dirt pad ready for a project, or looking at a road for, weeks at a time. And then in electrical, most of it was new construction. 99% of it was residential. I spent about a decade wiring homes in West Little Rock, and that was a great experience. I tell people that I should have, when I was in those nicer homes around the contractors, I should have paid attention a little more to what was going on, because I had my headphones in and was listening. Podcasts weren't huge back then, but I was listening to audiobooks and music and just focusing on, pulling wire and installing devices.
Yeah, I mean, you had a job to do. It's hard to pay attention to everything going on.
This episode of Hustle on Purpose is brought to you by Arkansas Real Estate Buyers. If you have a problematic piece of real estate, we would love to help you. Go to the description, click on the link, schedule a free consultation with me personally, and we'll get you set up. Now let's get back to the show.
To me, those electrical jobs, like the most impressive thing to me is I would struggle with that because I'm not great at extremely repetitive things. Like if the thought of going in, installing new devices on a house makes me want to like curl up in the corner and cry. Just like rinse and repeat, new outlets, like would drive me insane.
Yeah.
It's not that much with new construction, I guess, but you have to you have to pull all the wire and drill all the holes. And
Yeah, pulling the wire and drilling the holes, it's so labor intensive that I don't know that you ever feel bored. But then on the trim out, if you're in a 10,000 square foot house and you've got 300 outlets and switches to put in, and it's going to take you days, it's like you need something else to occupy your mind.
Yeah, I would go insane. I would go crazy. But anyways, okay, so that led you to, then you got into the residential side. I know quite a bit about your time there because we worked together. But for those of you that don't know, for everyone that doesn't know, what was kind of your job role when you went to work for the institutional investment company?
I did project management. I estimated rehab budgets at new houses that they were interested in buying.
Mm-hmm.
I did quality control stuff, punch lists, making punch lists at the end of the projects. I would make the scopes for the contractors at the beginning of the projects. I would spend too much time talking to the maintenance department. I would aid in
Preach.
aid in helping lease the houses if we needed to go out and show a potential, resident a house. We'd aid with that.
Hiring and firing vendors.
Right. Hiring project managers seemed to be a big task over the years. Training project managers. Just keeping up with all the data and statistics that, a large company looks at when they're counting their days and their budgets and all that stuff.
It was an invaluable experience. I mean, speaking for myself personally, I'm extremely grateful, but those were long days and what felt like even longer years. But I look back on it fondly because I liked almost all the people that I worked with, vendors included. And the experience you get from doing that many different single family homes in that compressed amount of time. So you were there about 4 years. How many rehabs would you say you had a part of?
Yeah, I think it was close to 550 rehabs.
Yeah, and that experience of seeing 500, because in single family, it is very different than commercial. Every house is different. Every plot's different. It's, they have their own unique issues, and there's no shortcut to that experience, right? You just have to go through seeing all of those different iterations and different vendors, and there's not much that can happen on a single family residential project in Central Arkansas that you or I haven't seen. I feel like, it's like we've already ridden that roller coaster 500 and something times. It's just kind of old hat at this point.
Right. Right. The new encounters would be like showing up to your project and it's now a crime scene. Or, watching neighbors down the street, get in a physical fight. Those are the new experiences.
And the occasional raccoon or bat or that stuff. I don't think it matters how many houses you go into. You get trapped in a bathroom with a squirrel. You can't prepare yourself for that.
Right. Yeah. Squirrels don't scare me. I do hate squirrels.
Yeah. Have you ever had one on you?
No. Raccoons scare me. I'm always looking out for raccoons.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the squirrels hit different when they get a hold of you.
I was in I found a nest of fleas the other day. Oof. Not in the house, but in the crawl space. There was a bunch of overgrown vegetation, and I stood up and looked down and thought I had a bunch of ants on me. There were so many. It was
Golly.
fleas.
It is a unique feeling when you get into the fleas. I've ridden home in my underwear several times because it's just I just got to throw my clothes in the bed of the truck and make it home.
Right. I normally keep flea spray in. I don't know what happened to mine, but there was a dollar store close by, and I went and got some.
That's advanced.
Took care of them.
I need some of that. The problem is if you start preparing for all these situations that you've seen, I felt like the toolbox in the back of my truck and then the back seat of my truck just became a hoarding spot for various things. It's someone gets in my car. It's why do you need these 3-foot long bolt cutters. It's like, well, this one time I had to like, whatever. Why do you need a 16-pound sledgehammer? Well, this one time I was at this house and needed one.
Right. Yeah. My wife got in my car the other day and asked me why I had this pink like ribbon tape back there. I was like, well, that's what I use to mark the trees that need to be removed.
Yeah. Smart. That like nylon kind of, yeah. Smart. You got to have stuff, like Boy Scouts, just prepared for anything. I forgot where I started that. We were kind of talking about the job role you had previously, going through all those renovations, and that leads us into a bit of what you're doing now. So you have a newer company, and you also do some work for me as well. We'll just put that out there. But this may be helpful for some people out there with rental portfolios. One of the biggest issues with my company, we'll just talk about it because I've talked to you about it, is the cash flow from the rentals does a good job at like paying for the rentals. The issue is when trying to scale a company like mine is the cash flow doesn't necessarily spin off a lot of extra money for things like salaries or anything like that, which makes it tough to, at a certain point, to grow a real estate holding company like mine. Refinancing and stuff like that to access the equity in the portfolio can help me with stuff, but as interest rates rise, it makes those refinances more difficult, which is exactly why you see a lot of the stagnation in the market happening now. And when interest rates were low, refinancing and getting access to capital was easy, was a lot of the reason why you saw the market going crazy the last couple of years. So all that to say, your experience and our experience working together has us in a situation where like, I wish I could just hire you full time and maybe it'll happen. But as it stands right now, you're kind of out there on the open market offering your services, which I think is outstanding. It's a big part of why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I think what you have to offer is extremely unique. Your skill set is fairly niche. I mean, it's like remodeling single family homes in Central Arkansas. But as specific as it is, it's still very broad. There's still, hundreds of thousands of homes, and a lot of them needing to get renovated, and a lot of people out there that don't know what they're doing that could really benefit from accessing the knowledge and experience that you have. And from my understanding, that's basically, in a broad sense, what you're offering with your company. Does that kind of sum it up a little bit? Right. You can get into more specifics.
Right. I help anybody from, a homeowner who has one house that is putting new tile in their shower to a real estate investment company that's got, 1,000 houses. Mm-hmm. Some of the areas that I can help people with is estimating, budgeting. So if you're interested in buying a house, whether it's to own it and live in it or to use it as an investment property, I can look at the house and work up, budgets based on, what you want to do or what code enforcement would make you do. Sometimes when I look at a house, I'm just trying to, and this is all, input from the client, but I'll come up with a budget for like a make ready. Just this is bare necessity to get a renter in, or all the way up to, let's get this house, replace everything that needs replaced to where you're not going to have to do anything except small maintenance on it for 10 years or whatever. So looking at new properties, estimating, budgeting is one area. The second area is creating scopes of work. I call it, list making lists for the different contractors that are going to work on the house. So say you...
And you can provide references
right
for those contractors, which is an invaluable thing because you've been through hundreds of contractors and we have a long blacklist of people that can't be used.
Right. We have a long do not hire list.
Yeah. So that's something that's like hard to put like a dollar amount. It's hard to quantify, but that I just want people to realize that that experience can save them a ton of money and headaches. And
using the right person will literally save you thousands of dollars in weeks, days, maybe even months.
yeah.
So yeah, I can make some good recommendations. I do quality control. So there's a big company in Central Arkansas that they do a lot of renovation work and new construction. And they have project managers that are out, managing the work. But I am a non-biased third party that'll come in once the contractors tell them the house is done and they see it's 90% done or whatever. I'll come in and basically do like a little home inspection. I'll test all the outlets, check for plumbing leaks, make sure the HVAC equipment works. I'll blue tape areas that the paint isn't right or whatever, and I'll make a detailed list. That project manager gets that list and then gives it to the contractors. But it's good to have a second set of eyes on the house. So that project manager may have been in that house 20 times over the course of the project.
They get the blinders on.
Every time they're in there, they're thinking about, a phone call, or they see that the tile's not done, and you're always thinking about something else. When I go in to make a punch list, I'm not thinking about how much money was spent here. I'm not thinking
Right.
about, the guy didn't show up to do this. I'm just looking at the house and picking out the areas that may have not been done right. And then they can
Right.
choose, I might put, this house is a good candidate for gutters, and they may not want, maybe
Yeah.
wasn't in the budget or whatever, but I would let them, know
Yeah.
that.
Gutters could be a good idea, and here's why.
Yeah. And right. In some cases. So budget, scopes, quality control, project management. I do a variety of things in project management.
Well, you kind of fill the void in between some things, right? Like let's take project management. For companies like myself or some of these other companies that you do some work for, let's just take me for example. Hiring you on in like a salary position would be tough, and I mean you have a family. Taking you into account in that decision, if I ever like slow down buying, like because interest rates go up and all of this stuff, it's like, well, I just signed on, just told Josh I'd pay him X amount of dollars a year, and now we've slowed down buying. He doesn't have any projects to manage. It's kind of there's like smaller companies like mine where it's like financially to put you on salary just doesn't make sense, but like using your services in certain times and aspects makes a ton of sense. Or individuals out there that had a pipe burst in their kitchen, and in order maybe they've gotten an insurance check, but they need a tile person, they need a countertop person, they need cabinets, they need paint, they need sheetrock, they need plumbing, all of these trades that need to get organized. But you're kind of filling a gap between maybe your typical homeowner doing it themselves and them hiring a GC, right? Because GCs, the downside to that is it's more expensive and you can't really control the GC, right?
Right.
Like we've all heard horror stories about GCs just like running off with money or never getting the job done or whatever, right? You're kind of filling the gap of like, you're going to save that homeowner money, but they're going to have to run that project themselves. But you, through your experience, can tell them what needs to be done, the process to go through, what order of operations to follow, and a list of contacts that you recommend for calling for tile, plumbing, whatever.
That's right. If you have a GC come in, you're stuck following their process and their timeline and how they do things. I'm there to help you have more control and have more information and be able to make better decisions. And I
Yeah.
can be used, I can come in and spend 2 hours with you, and if you feel comfortable at that point, you can take it from there. If you want me to come in and see the project all the way through, that's an option too.
Mm-hmm. Nobody, like when it comes to your people's primary residence, I've told people this before, nobody's going to manage that project probably or be on top of it as much as the homeowner that's living there, right? Because it's in your face. It's like, and it's there all the time. That GC or whoever has 40,000 other things going on, including probably a house of their own with its own issues. And, it's like, it just depends on where your customer's at, right? Some people just have the money and they're like, I don't have the time, I don't have the knowledge, but I've got the money. I'm just going to give it to Mr. General Contractor and he's going to take care of it. There's a lot of people out there that want to be more hands-on and know that they'll be more of a driving force than a GC. And I think people just don't know that what you do exists. So hopefully some people find this podcast and find out that like, oh, there's at least one person out there that just has a lot of experience that isn't trying to charge me an arm and a leg, and can meet me in the middle there between a general contractor and trying to do it on your own. Because I don't necessarily recommend general contractors. I also don't necessarily recommend people just trying to do it on their own, depending on the severity of the issue they're trying to fix.
Right. You wanna get at least talk to some people that know what they're doing and get some good input and have a good plan formulated before you start.
Yes.
Remodeling part of your house. Another area that we haven't talked about is how I can help wholesalers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's a number of out of town wholesalers that are buying in Central Arkansas, and when they are interested in a property, it's like they don't know who to send to take pictures and give quotes, and they're sending a contractor out there, and that contractor, even if they're the best contractor in the world, they can't help but be a little biased in how they're looking at the job, because they might want to do part of it, or they might know somebody that wants to do it, whatever.
Right. Or they don't know enough about plumbing or HVAC or landscaping or roofing or whatever.
Right.
Like if you're sending a contractor out there, they're probably like a specific, they're not a jack of all trades.
Right. And permitting's a big area that a lot of people don't know the ins and outs of the different permits when it comes to remodeling a house. But for wholesalers, I can go out, I can take pictures of the property, take videos, set log boxes, provide budgets that they can share with, potential buyers. And and I pretty much can do anything for, if it's a wholesaler in California. The other week I went to the DMV for the wholesaler because they didn't have anybody here, and they needed something at the DMV, and that's a way that I can help. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Another out of town investor is doing a remodel here. They don't have any boots on the ground here. Mm-hmm. The only contact they have is the contractor at the house, and a service I offer is to just go do a property visit and do a progress report and write down, all the things that I see that, you asked me to look at. I can take pictures. And in one case, we found that, the guy was supposed to pull all these permits, and I guess there was a miscommunication where they thought he did, and he thought they said, don't worry about it or whatever. It's like, when I got there and asked him and kind of saw that what was going on, we found out he didn't pull the permits that he was supposed to, and he was, a good ways into the project.
Yeah, it's a good way to get in trouble.
Right, and especially in North Little Rock, and that's where this was at.
Yeah. Yeah, good old North Little Rock. Shout out to North Little Rock Code Enforcement. You're the best. I just want to be friends. Can we just get along?
Right.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think as people figure out that your service exists, there's going to be a real demand for it. I think your biggest issue is going to be you've only got so many hours in the week, and your skill set's hard to replicate into somebody else.
Right. Scheduling, because, if you're interested in looking at a house that is on the market for just came up, it's on the market one day, you want me to go look at it that day, probably. And
Right.
There's never been a case where I could not get there within 24 hours. So I try to make the schedule work. And, most of what I do, it's 1 to 2 hours per what I'm looking at. So that's the good part of it, is I can fit, a lot of jobs in a day or a week.
Right. When you have your real estate license as well, so you can access stuff that's listed. And
very easy for me to schedule the appointments to look at a house. And then a lot of investors or other people will have a home inspector go look at these houses, and which is a good thing, but a lot of the houses, the utilities aren't on. They may have been vacant for 3 years.
Yep.
I'm not sure what that home inspector is doing if they're not checking. You go to a house and all the siding's rotten and the utilities are off. It's like, what? You're paying that home inspector a lot of money to give you a very short, broad report saying that the house is rough.
Yeah, they're just gonna. Home inspectors are professional liability dodgers, anyways, right? Like, their reports are just made to say, "This is rough. Consult a licensed professional."
And I can tell you, I've got this big spreadsheet of categories and budgets, and I'll break it down and write a bunch of details out on, if you're pulling permits and doing this one, right, 100%, here's a good idea of what it's going to cost. And I can even, I can look at one that I've done in the near vicinity and look at the budgets on that one and, compare.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to account for every dollar that's going to be spent on that house, and then I'm putting a dollar amount on it. So I'm going to tell you what the home inspector is going to tell you and more, and assigning cost to it. And I'm a fraction of, what it costs to get a home inspection.
Right. And it's two different services, right? Like, one, home inspections are important in certain scenarios, and what you offer is important in different scenarios.
Right. If it's a house you're living in, I'm trying to think of a good example. Different circumstances. There's times where I would tell you, you probably want to use a home inspector for this. Then you've got this legal document.
Yeah.
If
you're buying a primary residence conventionally and you're taking out a large mortgage and whatever, like, yes, just
home inspection is the way to go.
Yeah.
If you're trying to buy an investment property that's been vacant and
right.
You're looking at several properties each week or month or whatever, and you just need the numbers, this is a better option.
If somebody was buying a primary residence, traditional closing, all of that we just said, and getting a home inspection, but it was a house they were going to renovate, I would tell them to have you both out there.
Right.
I'd be like, here's a great home inspector for you to take this, like, this home inspection to the sellers and point out, like, X, Y, and Z. And here's also have Josh go tell him what you're thinking about doing, so that you have that budget in mind. Because most people can't do that. Coming up with a budget on a renovation for people that don't do that for a living is really difficult.
I hear a lot of, agents and different people throw numbers at a project.
Yeah.
And I don't know where these numbers come from, but the problem is, like, identifying what it is you want to budget, like what it is you want to do in the first place. how do you want to renovate the house?
Yeah.
And that's the part that, I know the questions to ask and, the numbers to assign and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I hate when I go to a house and somebody's like, I think it only needs 30,000. It's like, man, if you're going to pull a permit, this house needs at least 60,000.
Right.
But then what are you wanting to do to it?
Right.
If you can tell me your goal, I can adjust how I look at it.
Right. Yeah, you get 10 different people in there, they're going to give you 10 different budgets. Because it's that is the hardest part about like what you do is, we both come from a background where the institutional company we worked for very purposely and did a very good job of having a very specific standard for the finished remodel, which allowed us to kind of reverse engineer exactly what that budget was going to be. Not that we stayed on budget every time, but like without having that very specific standard, without being the McDonald's trying to put out the same burger every time, it does make it difficult to build those systems for how exactly you do a remodel. But it is tough if somebody just goes into a house, it's like, yeah, I just want it to be nice. Cool, man. What does that mean? What's nice?
Right. And we've learned, how to take that a little further and ask questions and figure out exactly. I feel like that's the part that I've learned more about in the last 6 months is, not just here's how I would do it, but like, what do you want? Tell me what you want. There'll be a bunch of back and forth on information and then I'll give you what you want.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm excited for you. I think that business is going to do really well. And, I'm just excited to see where it goes. I think you're offering a unique value proposition to people. People just need to know about you. So maybe this will help.
Right. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming out. Did we miss anything?
I guess if you're interested in contacting me, email.
Yeah. What's your contact info?
ARK Remodeling Consultants @gmail.com would be the best way.
ARK Remodeling Consultants @gmail.com. You want me to give them your cell phone?
No.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming out. We got to run. Thank you all for listening to the Hustle on Purpose podcast. If you got any value out of this, just be sure to like and share this video with someone else that may get something out of it as well. Be sure to go check out Josh and Arkansas Remodeling Consultants if you have any need for any of the services he just talked about. And look forward to seeing you next time. Hustle on Purpose.